Maybe some of you, brothers and sisters, are already familiar with what we are doing right here during this past week and the next week, namely participating in what is called Stand Firm program. And the society has used this kind of program for the last at least 5 years. And we have been invited to many different places. In the beginning, we went to universities and tried to teach the teachers in order that the teachers finally can teach to the students at the university the subject of the Holocaust, now from Jehovah's Witnesses' perspective. So we have been invited, Brother Campbell and I, to many different universities, and the society has sent me even to Brazil and to Puerto Rico, to other places too. And in all these universities, that question always came up in the mind of not only the students, but also the teachers and the highly educated professors. Namely, what was mentioned in the introduction about the signing of the Declaration of Jehovah during the Nazi time in the concentration camp, what Jehovah's Witnesses had refused. It was a real puzzle in the mind of most of those highly educated people. Why did you not do that? And I think it's a good idea for all of us as witnesses going out in the service, and these questions can come up in the service, and it's good for us to know the answer and not say when people ask, well, why didn't you just plainly, simply sign the declaration and go home? Why did you not do that? And if we would have to say, well, I don't know, don't ask me. Why didn't they do that? I don't know. Well, we should be prepared and be ready to give a reasonable, logical answer. And there's a very simple answer to that. And we should learn that and be prepared in order to really be Jehovah's Witnesses, to represent Jehovah and take his side. Because most of those students and even the highly educated professors and teachers, they all said, if I would have been there, I would have signed any paper the Nazis would have set before me to sign, and got out of that place as fast as my feet possibly would carry me. So it was an unsolvable problem in their mind. So we had to give an answer to that. And basically, you know already the answer to that question. Maybe you say, no, I don't, but you do. There are two basic reasons for it, and you know these reasons too, because they're Bible-based principles. The first principle has to do with the educated, Bible-trained conscience. Just think about it. How can a Jehovah's Witness sign a paper that says, I renounce my faith in Jehovah God, in Jesus Christ, in the Bible, and give up the preaching of the good news, and if other brothers would visit me again, I hand them over to the Gestapo, and from then on, join and support the Nazis and the Gestapo. Well, how can you do that? A Bible-trained conscience cannot do that. Even so, a fellow in Brazil, he told me the boldface, oh yes, I can. Well, we should not forget, there are too many people today in the world who don't have a conscience. They have no scruples. They can commit any crime, a horrible crime, and have absolutely no remorse. But do we, as Jehovah's Witnesses, want to be and become these kind of people? But the answer is simply no. We can't. There's no way that we can do that and keep a clean conscience. How can anybody sign that paper and still have a clean conscience before himself, before his family, and especially before Jehovah God? A Bible-trained conscience cannot do that. It's as simple as that. And the brothers proved that a Bible-educated conscience is different as what people consider a conscience, what is not trained, what is not educated on God's principles. Well, there is one answer, and it's a simple answer, isn't it? All of you will agree. Oh, I knew that already. And there's another answer, just as simple and uncomplicated. And that has to do with just plain, simple honesty. How can we say it is honest? Even the SS told the brothers in the concentration camp, sign that lousy paper and go home, and then you can believe and do what you want to. But is that really true? How can a person be just honest? By signing a paper with certain stipulations to do or not to do, or to promise to do or not to do certain stipulations, certain things, and then not even think on complying with the signed stipulations. Is that not outright dishonest? And unfortunately, that happens too often in political circles today around the whole world. And how do most of the people feel about that? People are fed up with that. Well, the brothers did not want to become people like those, because the Nazis not only helped, but educated people to become like that, dishonest and unscrupulous, like most of the people. But the brothers did not want to become like that as the rest of the people. That is the way this world is dominated, run, guided, instructed, and people practice that. That are the devil's injustices and dishonesties, where the brothers didn't want to make themselves a friend of the devil, so to say, by copying the devil's dishonesty and trickery. Well, if we understand these simple, basic Bible principles, we will know, if the subject comes up, how to give an answer. And most of the people will say, have never thought on that. And I agree, you're right. And you have an answer, a real answer, but makes sense. To most honest-hearted people. Not all people are like that fellow in Brazil. Oh, yes, I can. Well, these kind of things we should understand. And then we are prepared to be witnesses for Jehovah, to stand up for Jehovah's side in the big issue of universal sovereignty. The devil, what was just touched on by Brother Kempler, has made the accusation that any person and every person, no matter intelligent creature, will give up his worship toward his God Jehovah, and will finally cave in. And we see in Job's case, he even accused you have bribed him. No wonder he serves you. But nobody loves God, and nobody loves the truth. Just push him under pressure hard enough, and he will collapse, and he will curse you straight in your face. And that is why Jehovah has permitted sufferings, even of his own people. And we know that Jehovah didn't even spare his own son, Jesus. He had to prove his loyalty, his heartfelt devotion to his God Jehovah, his Father. And we see he set the right example for all of us to follow. So he gained God's favor. God did not forget him. And we know he gave him a great reward. He put him in an elevated place as nobody else except Jehovah God. What a wonderful reward Jehovah got. And that is what made Jehovah's Witnesses different in the concentration camp, what no other inmate could understand, why Jehovah's Witnesses are so from their standpoint or viewpoint, I was crazy to stay here when you can go home. Get going, get out here, out of that place. But Jehovah's Witnesses believe in a resurrection. So, no matter what, alive or dead, that's not the issue. We believe in the resurrection and everlasting life and a reward from Jehovah God for loyalty and faithfulness even unto death. And nobody, absolutely nobody, no devil and no henchman of the devil can take that reward from Jehovah away from his servants. That means from us. It's as simple as that. But do we not only say, oh yes, I believe that too, but here is what we have to show by action that we really trust Jehovah God. He will get us out. And I think it might be a good idea to relate a couple of experiences which help us to see that Jehovah God is not blind to injustices. He does not turn a blind eye to all the happenings in the world. He is interested in his people. That means in all of you and me too. He is interested. It's not like most of the people say, well, why does God permit that? Either he doesn't exist, or if he really exists, you come set out already, well, then he doesn't care about us suffering here. He's so far, who knows, up there in the heavens. And he doesn't have to suffer. He has a nice life, enjoyable, and so he couldn't care less what humans have to suffer. And so what's the result? You know, then they lose their faith and trust. And boy, isn't that true? Most people have, if they had so much faith, but that little bit is also gone now. And then people, but it's a result, or the response of most of the people, then they get bitter against God. And haven't you heard that yourself in the service, that people always come with that excuse, if there is a God, why doesn't he do something? Well, Jehovah has done something already. He has already installed a government, a righteous government in the heavens, and has given us, all of us, the rest of us, the hope for everlasting life in a new righteous order of things to restore a paradise here on the earth. So Jehovah God has done something like, but on his part already for all of us. But we have to hold on. And many times experiences of brothers and sisters who had to endure this kind of unjust persecution and have seen the hand of protection of Jehovah upon his people in order to keep them, for instance, supplied with spiritual food. To listen to these kind of experiences will definitely strengthen our faith and our trust in Jehovah God. Let me just relate a couple of those. When the Nazi system had disappeared at the end of the Second World War, then where I lived and grew up was occupied by the Russians. You know, Germany was divided in 4 parts, and the Americans occupied one part, the British and the French, and the Russians too. Where I lived, it was what became finally East Germany. You will remember that. So, in East Germany, right after the war, the Russians said, you can believe what you want to and do what you want to, we don't care, because they knew that Jehovah's Witness was the only religion that did not support the Nazi and that wicked system. They knew that. They were in a concentration camp. That's why I said, we couldn't care less. You can do and believe what you want to. But the point was, there were too many people who listened to Jehovah's Witnesses in their message. Because the communist system, that was a a big disappointment for the people also. They were looking for something better. And so the people came in the truth. Boy, it was amazing and very enjoyable to work in East Germany. And so we grew by leaps and bounds. And then finally they said, hey, wait a minute, this gets out of hand. We have to stop that. There are too many people who listen to what they consider foolishness to believe in God, because they wanted the people to become atheists and not believe in God. So finally in 1950 they put a ban on Jehovah's Witnesses again and picked up all the brothers, especially in the beginning, and threw them in the penitentiary. But during that time it was very difficult to get some literature. So the only place where the brothers could get literature was to go to Berlin and to get some literature and put them maybe in a bag or whatever and take them back. And then over there, they many times multiplied the individual magazines, especially, that the brothers in different congregations and cities had some spiritual food. But the problem was one had to go to Berlin. At that time, the wall didn't exist yet. So you had to get there. But there was no way for anybody to just go to the railroad station and buy a ticket to Berlin. You know, you was immediately under suspicion. Why do you want to go to Berlin? You want to go and join the capitalists on the other side. You know, I mean, they stopped it. And all the roads leading into Berlin were all blocked and checkpoints from police. So you couldn't just say, okay, I jump in a car or a motorcycle and drive to Berlin and come back. There was no way to do that. The police checked everybody in and out. So the only way to go there was with a bicycle. And not only with a bicycle, you couldn't go on the highways because you were stopped too. Anybody, even walking in and out, you were checked. So it had to be somebody who knew the highways and the byways and dodge the checkpoints. Well, the question was, who's going to go? Just think on yourself. Would you go? Would you trust Jehovah and His protection? A good question, isn't it? Well, one brother, he knew the highways and the byways around Berlin, got on his bicycle one day and drove to Berlin in order to get some new magazines. Well, it went all good. It was a beautiful spring day, and it was a holiday. And that's why he was thinking that's the best day, because some of the policemen might be on furlough going home to his family or to his parents or maybe go to a show or a football game, or but who knows. So he said that would be a good day because there are not too many out on the checkpoints. So he went to Berlin and got himself a nice package of magazines, put it on the back of his bicycle, and here he went back home, avoiding the checkpoints. But as we know, things go good for a long time, but earlier or later, it's going to happen. It's bound to happen. We know that. The law of average will catch everybody. And so here he drove around one corner, and boy, here he was, right in the middle of the street, the policeman. And so he stopped him. And he didn't beat around the bush. He asked him immediately, what do you have in the package? Because that's why he was standing there to check. Well, now, just put yourself in the brother's shoes. What would you have said? What answer would you have given him? Now, don't forget the point. It's not just the policeman. Don't forget, it's the devil behind whom we have to fight. We don't fight Nazis or communists or what. Our fight is a spiritual fight against the powers in the heavenly places, the devil and their demons. They are behind it, and they are just cooks. They are just puppets they use in order to create problems and difficulties for us as Jehovah's servants. So nobody really knows what went in the mind, was in the mind of that policeman. But as I mentioned, it was a nice, beautiful spring day, and maybe he was already angry and fed up that he had to stay there, stand in the street and check everybody if maybe they have a rotten egg in the pocket or not. So, and all his friends were already home, and maybe he wanted to see his girlfriend or go to a football game, or who knows. It doesn't matter really. So, when he asked the brother that question, what do you have in that package? The brother, with a big smile on his face, said, watchtowers. That policeman looked at him with a real mad face and said, hey man, I'm not in the mood, not today, for dumb jokes. And he said, beat it. Now, why do I tell you that experience? First of all, we should never forget that there is no ever a situation where for Jehovah is not a way out. It just doesn't exist. For Jehovah there's always a way out. But the devil likes that, to push you in the corner where there is obviously no way out. Can't back up, you cannot go to the right, and you cannot go to the left. There's no way to face it. But that policeman, why did he not believe that? And he thought it was a joke. Because he knew, or was convinced, if there would be watchtowers in, nobody would say there are watchtowers in. It had to be a joke. And he was not in the mood, not in that day, for jokes. But here's the point what we should learn. We should never, ever in our life resort to lies. Because who's behind lies? Not Jehovah God. He's a God of truth. And we are His witnesses and tell the truth. You know, if you tell the truth being sad, what for? Why not be rejoicing and smile and tell the truth? We have a reason to worship Jehovah, who's a happy God. But worldly people would never do that. Never. Only Jehovah's Witness would do something like that. Because they're honest. They tell the truth. They are not devious and not crooked and dishonest. The whole world is dishonest under the devil's rule. But here's the point what we should never forget. If the brother would have used to hide or get around the facts and have lied, what would have been the result? The result would have been that he would have stepped out from God's powerful protective hand and thought, I have to find my own way out here with some lies. But we should not forget that the devil also knows what is true. And the devil would see to it that the truth would come out, and then they would say, and now you are one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and you're just as big fat liar as everybody else. Aren't you ashamed? That's what the devil wants us to do, to copy him. And so the devil got a real slap in his face because the brother did not do it. But the devil said, oh yes, everybody is a liar. I'm not the only liar. Everybody is a liar. You and you and you and I too. And that is just not true. We can prove that Jehovah God has servants here on this earth, even so imperfect, yes, but they are honest. They are devoted to the truth and stick to the truth no matter what is the outcome. The outcome is not the issue. You know, I mean, it could have turned out the other way around too, and it says, okay, in a penitentiary. But we stand, it's not a crime to worship Jehovah God. It is the obligation of all humans here on this earth to worship Jehovah God and stand up for his principles. And we should never lose sight of that important aspect in our life. And prove the devil a liar, but not everybody is like the devil says, one like himself. No, there are people in the world, they are dedicated, and they love Jehovah God from their whole heart and their whole mind and their whole strength and their whole soul, and not only love Jehovah God and the truth, but also their neighbor, you know, as themselves. And that is what the brothers did, to stand up and to help the brothers and the sisters in the eastern part of Germany to get the spiritual food. And let me just briefly mention another one to show it is Jehovah's hand of protection we have to rely. Because in a situation like that, what can you do? Resort to lies, that's what the devil wants you to do. That's why he corners you. You know, but if you trust Jehovah God, he will provide whatever is needed. Let me give you another experience about not just brothers. Sisters are very courageous too, believe it. Very courageous. When the communists in East Germany picked us up, there was the same system with the Nazis. The Nazis called it Gestapo and the communists called it Stasi. Well, when the interrogation was over, you might have read my life story in the Watchtower. Then they brought us back for the Germans to have a court case and condemn us. Well, when I came back, and a sister, where I was a special pioneer in my last assignment before they picked me up, she tried to visit me. And she got permission to visit me. So what did she do? She took a magazine, folded. By the way, these magazines that went to East Germany were printed on very fine, this, how do they call it, onion skin, you know, but the Bible is printed. You know, it didn't take very much space, you know. So she folded the Watchtower up in just a tiny little square and put it in a handkerchief. And when we embraced, then she put that handkerchief in my hand. And I put it in my pocket, and everything went fine. Just like that. Well, it seemed it was just like that. But it wasn't. Because the fellow who was sitting there and watched us didn't see anything. Nothing phony or something that happened. But it seemed there was another guy who was on the next table, and he saw something white has changed hands. He didn't see what it was, but he saw something white has changed one hand to the other. So when the guard brought me back to my cell, there were 4 other brothers in the cell too with me at that time. When he brought me back, he left, and it was not 2 minutes, and they came back and ripped open the door, and there were about 2 or 3 policemen, and they came in, and immediately I was still standing there, right there at the door, in the entrance of the cell, and said, "What did she give you? What do you have in your pocket?" Well, what would she say? It's tough, isn't it? Because if I would have handed that over, that sister would stay right there. She would never have gone home, not on that day, that's for sure. But here is, you can see how the devil puts you in the corner. Here you are. What are you going to do? You cannot say yes and you cannot say no, because no, if you say didn't give me anything, it's a lie. And you cannot say yes either. So many times there are no answers, yes or no. It's just not so easy. So I didn't say anything. I just looked straight in his face, put my hand in my pocket, and pulled out a white handkerchief. I didn't say nothing, not one word. And they made big eyes. Oh, sure. Well, it's understandable. If a person meets a loved one under these kind of circumstances and conditions, it's normal and understandable for a normal human that he needs a handkerchief, doesn't he? Wouldn't you? Okay, there was the answer. I didn't say a word, but they took it as an answer. Closed the door and left. It is Jehovah that helps us to get out of these kind of conditions. So why do I try to relate these experiences? To help you trust in Jehovah God with your whole heart. And isn't that what Psalm 145? Well, Psalm 145, it puts it this way when it says, verse 18 and 19, it says, Jehovah is near to all those calling upon him, to all those who call upon him in trueness or in truth. In other words, not with lies. And it goes on, verse 19, and the desire of those fearing him, he will perform. And their cry for help, he will hear, and he will save them. Yes, we need Jehovah's help, and the only thing what you can do under these conditions is what Nehemiah did, namely praying to Jehovah God for help. Because, what do you stand? What can you do? You're trapped. But do you have that faith and trust in Jehovah God to get you out of that situation but the devil has tried to get you into? And I think that are things which are encouraging for all of us to strengthen our faith and our trust in Jehovah God, and never forget, for Jehovah God, there is never, ever a situation where he does not know the way out. Thank you.